Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about a distinguished literary theorist, Kuntak, who gave a new definition to the concept of poetry in Indian poetics. Students, in this first lecture on a series on Kuntak's Vakroktijivita, today we will have a brief introduction with Kuntak and his theory of Vakrokti. Students, Kuntak was a Kashmiri Sanskrit poet and literary theorist who is remembered for his work of Vakroktijivita in Indian poetics and aesthetics. He lived roughly in the middle of 10th century to the middle of 11th century, between Anandavardhana in the 9th century we can say and Abhinav Gupta in the 10th century. And Kuntak was a contemporary of the famous poets Dhananjay and Rajshekhara. Students, I have just mentioned Anandavardhana intentionally because Anandavardhana is recorded in the history of Indian poetics for his work Dhavanaloka. And this is a landmark work that established the doctrine of Dhvani as an aesthetic suggestion. And Kuntak was the one who just looked at poetry something beyond mere Dhvani. Kuntak's Vakroktijivita establishes the Vakrokti school, which attempts to define Kavya not in terms of Dhvani only, not in terms of Dhvani Alankar only, but in terms of its distinctive expressions that are characteristics to poetry and to the essential principle of poetry itself. So before talking about why Kuntak gave a new definition to the concept of poetry, why Kuntak moved away from that concept of poetry as Dhvani only, let's have a literal meaning and definition of the term Vakrokti. Students, etymologically the word Vakrokti consists of two components. One is Vakra, another is Ukti. Here, the first one, Vakra, means crooked, indirect or unique. And the second word, Ukti, means poetic expression or speech. So in this way, Vakrokti is considered to be a crooked speech. And various literary critics has defined it in their own way, as V. Raghavan says that Vakrokti is a striking, deviating expression. On the other hand, K. Krishnamurti says that Vakrokti can be defined as a masterly art underlying every element of poetry. So the point to be recorded is that Vakrokti is considered to be one of the valuable elements or components of poetry in Indian poetics. Students, this as an important element, Vakrokti has always been there in poetry. And it was not Kuntaka, the first theorist, who gave or propounded this concept of Vakrokti. Even before Kuntaka, many poets, many texts are replete with the use of Vakrokti. Here I would like to make mention of Atharva Veda and Agni Purana. Vakrokti is there. Then there is earlier poets Subandhu. He made use of Vakrokti in his text Vasvadatta. Then Amaru used Vakrokti in his text Amar Satkam. Then Bana's Kadambari, there is also use of Vakrokti. But here the point is that the earliest use of Vakrokti was in the sense of crookedness, as it is there in Atharva Veda and Agni Purana. And later on, Subandhu, Amru, Bana and other poets, they used Vakrokti in their own individual ways. Subandhu used Vakrokti as the word Vedagde in the sense of Vakrokti, and Amru and Bana used Vakrokti in the sense of humorous, witty remarks. So here that Kuntak was the first one who just gave a most exhaustive treatment of Vakrokti. He just broadened the scope of Vakrokti, that Vakrokti is not only a humorous speech, it is not only an oblique quality of language, it is not only a crooked speech, but it is a unique utterance, transcending the common modes of speech and integrated with charm. I'll repeat here that Kuntaka gave an exhaustive treatment of Vakrokti. He just moved it away from being his oblique expression. He just interpreted it as a unique utterance. And that unique utterance transcends the common modes of speech and integrates with charm. So Kuntaka has defined Vakrokti as an utterance characterized by wit or ingenuity. He talks about uniqueness of expression, that is born of poet's compositional skill. So here the point is that Vakrokti is a unique expression, and why that uniqueness is there? It is just because of the skill of the poet. And how that uniqueness of expression happens? Because the poet has adorned both word and meaning. Shabd and arth, they are very important, not the dhvani only. Here is the point. Then Vakrokti, according to Kuntaka, is an indispensable character in the texture of poetry. It is a striking mode of speech because it is based on the beautiful use or the integration of the word and meaning in a text. Kuntaka defined poetry as the outcome, as the result of a talented poet. And as mentioned in the earlier slide that he is talking about the origin of Vakrokti from the compositional skills of a poet. So the poetic talent is that matters. And in other words, it depends upon the kavya vyapar, that is the poetic function of a poet. Then, according to Kuntaka, Vakrokti is a poetic expression of speech as distinguished from expression or speech either of the ordinary workaday life or of the scientific laboratory, the scholastic classroom and the philosophical textbook. Means something unique is there in this expression of speech. In the poetic expression, something unique is there. So here, Kuntaka is just emphasizing on the uniqueness of expression. According to Kuntaka, Vakrokti is also recognized as the embellishment of the word and its meaning. And word and meaning both are the physical constituents of poetry. And the embellishment of both word and meaning is Vakrokti. Kuntaka believed that Vakrokti facilitates the expression to give a kind of a unique pleasure to the Sahrdaya, the sensitive reader, the sensitive audience. And Kuntaka seems to add that there is no line of demarcation between Vakrokti and poetry. According to Kuntaka, that they have invariably, both poetry and Vakrokti, they have invariably the same character, assimilated with each other. To conclude, we can say that every charming feature of poetry must be recognized as Vakrokti. And Kuntaka, in brief, we can say in his Vakroktijivita, he has just discussed in detail Vakrokti as the soul of poetry. As the title of his text, Vakroktijivita itself tells that he has explained Vakrokti as the soul, as the life of poetry in this work. And Kuntaka is known for his literary sensibility, refined taste, deep insight and original thoughts, and the same is reflected in his epoch-making work Vakroktijivita. In this text, in the 4 chapters, Kuntaka has just discussed in detail the various types, the nature and the scope of Vakrokti. So, to conclude, we can say that in the whole range of Sanskrit poetics, the term Vakrokti got a new significance, a new meaning with the appearance of Kuntaka's Vakroktijivita. He revived this concept from verbal poetic figure to the essence of poetry. That is the key concern of Vakroktijivita, that Vakrokti is not a verbal poetic figure, but Vakrokti is the essence of poetry. That is the key concern of Vakroktijivita, and we will talk about the different types of Vakrokti which are mentioned in Vakroktijivita by Kuntaka in our next video. Thank you.